Tonight on Insights on PBS Hawaii. One of the big hurdles for many residents who want to install solar systems is the upfront investment. Now the state is developing a plan to help finance those startup costs. Tonight we'll find out how this innovative program could lay the groundwork to help you go green while helping Hawaii meet its clean energy goals. Now, live in our studio, our host, Dan Boylan.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. The state of Hawaii's goal is 70% clean energy by the year 2030. We have a long way to go. Currently, Hawaii relies on imported oil for 90% of its energy needs. Everyone acknowledges the wide variety of renewable energy sources available in Hawaii, solar, wind, and waves among them. But the problem remains how to pay for the equipment and technology needed to harness those resources and turn them into electricity to power our homes and communities. Those costs can keep green energy out of the reach of individual homeowners and small businesses. Tonight we'll explore a potential solution for financing green infrastructure. There's that word. The plan is being developed by the state and considered by lawmakers and the Public Utilities Commission. Some of you have invested in solar power, indeed many of you have, and others would like to if they could afford it. So we hope you will contribute your thoughts and questions. How much are you spending on electricity each month? What would you be able and willing to invest in renewable energy? Do you think the state should make this a priority? You can join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments for our guests. The contact information you now see on your screen will be repeated throughout the program. Insights is also streaming live on your computer and will be posted on our website after the broadcast. Now to our panel. Mike Gabbard is a state senator representing the Oahu district stretching from Waipahu to Kapolei. He's chaired the Senate Committee on Energy and Environment for the past 5 years. He previously represented West Oahu on the Honolulu City Council. Senator Gabbard drives a Nissan Leaf electric vehicle, and of course he's the father of our newest member of Congress, Tulsi Gabbard. Just call him Dad Gabbard. Traci Ho Kim is a manager in the State Energy Office, leading the Innovation, Policy, and Planning branch. Traci previously worked at Hawaiian Electric Industries, the parent company of HECO. She's worked at Google, Capital One, and Bain & Company as well. She holds an MBA from MIT and an economics degree from Princeton. Boy, that's a resume, Traci. Robert Harris is director of the Sierra Club's Hawaii chapter. He previously worked as an attorney in private practice, specializing in environmental and commercial law. He earned a BA in environmental science and a law degree from the University of Hawaii, and he clerked at the Hawaii Supreme Court. Robert has been working with the Sierra Club both here and nationally to make renewable energy available and affordable. Jessica Feingold is the Clean Energy Policy Manager at the Environmental Defense Fund. She comes to us from their West Coast office in San Francisco. Jessica works on projects to finance renewable energy and energy efficiency, including the OnBill repayment program that we'll be discussing in a few minutes. Jessica's background is in the finance industry, where she worked as a trader for Goldman Sachs and a vice president at the Fortress Investment Group. She has an MBA and a master's in environmental management from Yale. Senator Gabbard, where are we on our way toward 70% renewable energy resources?
Well, actually, Dan, we're at 12%, and we're pretty much on track to reach our 15%. By 2015, we're supposed to be at 15%. So I'm told that we're pretty much on track on reaching that first benchmark. But kind of big picture, Dan, what I wanted to mention was that our goal, hopefully collectively our goal, is to kick our addiction to fossil fuels. Right now we're spending $4 to $6 billion every year importing over 40 million barrels of oil. And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. When you have geothermal, world-class wind, world-class sun, ocean thermal, wave energy, biofuels, all built into our island paradise here, that's what we should be using, and keeping some of that $4 to $6 billion, the lion's share of that $4 to $6 billion here at home in this economy.
12% and 15% is fine, but that's a long way from 70% by 2030. I mean, I may be gone, but you're a young fella. You'll still be here.
Well, actually, Dan, it's 40% clean renewable by 2030. The other 30% is for energy efficiency by 2030.
By cutting down on the
correct
on the use,
correct,
literally the use of energy.
Correct.
Do we need to get there? Do we need something that is a game changer like this plan for repayment? Is that?
Well, it's going to take, there's no silver bullet, there's no magic elixir. It's going to take everything on board. And so that's been the message that I've been giving to my constituents, you know, whether it's the utility scale projects as well as distributed energy in terms of people getting PV systems up on their homes. And that's why I'm just hoping that my colleagues and I will continue working together to reach that goal. And very excited about this bill we'll be talking about tonight, SB 1087, the Green Infrastructure Financing Program, because it's very exciting stuff.
Well, what is it precisely, Traci? What is this green energy? Say it again.
Green Infrastructure Financing Program.
Green Infrastructure Financing Program. Let's have it, Traci.
So it has a big name, but really, you know, when it comes down to it, have you looked at your utility bill recently? I think we all open it up and we all say, what am I supposed to do? You know, it goes up, it goes down, you have no control over it. And it's really about how do we allow the folks of Hawaii, yourself, the Senator, Robert, really your neighbors, your cousins, how do we get control over this, lower our costs, make it predictable, and help to achieve our clean energy goals? So it's really about how do we achieve our goals and how do we bring all of the benefits to our own consumers?
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things I notice is that it depends on the neighborhood, the extent to which solar, for example, which seems to be the main thing that's used the most, where it's most often used. I mean, in wealthier neighborhoods, you see more of them up. In poorer neighborhoods, you see less of them. I'm quite shocked by, I think 28%, what is it, 28% I have solar water heaters in Hawaii, is it?
Approximately, and actually, just to show you what a success story the solar market has been in Hawaii, you know, last year the estimation is about 26% of construction jobs came out of the solar industry, which, you know, to some extent you can say, hey, this is a real success story. We're really, you know, the amount of solar we've installed is just exponentially going up. But you've precisely identified the problem. What about trying to serve underserved markets? What about renters? What about people who don't have the income stream to be able to install solar? And so what the concept we're trying to do here is find a way to make financing available so people can afford to install solar and pay it back on their electric bill. I mean, a very quick personal story, you know, my wife and I looked at installing solar, and when the $40,000 estimate came in, you know, we double clutched. And if, you know, the director...
Just double?
You know, there's all sorts of considerations, right? I mean, everyone is anticipating going on a vacation, paying a mortgage, sending kids to school, whatever it might be. And if our clean energy future relies on people writing $30,000 checks, we're probably going to have a tough time getting there. So plainly, the upfront cost is a difficult thing to overcome. And what we're doing here, and the reality is the money is there. You pay it on your electric bill. Maybe as a different example, and it's a quick one, you know, phones, you don't pay $600 for a phone. The company gives it to you essentially for free, and it asks you to pay $70 or $80 a month. And so that pays off the $600, $700 it costs for that phone, but we've commoditized it. We made it a service that's offered to you on a month-by-month basis. And so we need to do the same thing for energy, and that's essentially what we're talking about here, is everyone pays enough in their electric bill to pay for solar. Let's just go ahead and get it paid for up front, and then people pay it on their electric bill over time.
How do they do it on the mainland?
So we're actually, in California, where I'm based, really have made a lot of progress on what we're calling on-bill repayment, which is an innovative tool that would allow customers to pay for energy efficiency or renewable energy projects through their monthly utility bills. And this is something that's been mandated by the California Public Utilities Commission for commercial properties, that investor-owned utilities offer this program for commercial properties. But it's has not been implemented yet, and we expect implementation to be sometime mid-year. And we're also working on legislation that would enable this same sort of program for residential properties. And one of the biggest challenges, as we've talked about, is this high upfront cost. But at the same time, it's finding financing that actually can scale to meet the opportunity. There are utilities that offer financing to their customers and offer them the opportunity to pay for some of these projects. But we sort of like to think about asking, a bank to run power to your house. And you pay a lot per kilowatt hour to do that. And so what the program, that's sort of why we think this is innovative and different, is it allows private capital to come in and finance these projects at no upfront cost to the customer, and allows the utility to focus on what they're really good at doing, which is providing safe and reliable power.
But if I'm not mistaken, one of the solar credit is what now in Hawaii? It's 35%, right?
Correct.
A state solar credit of 35%. What's the federal credit? 30%. So you get a 65% credit. So your $40,000 system, that's a lot of system. Your $40,000 system, you're a math guy, aren't you? You figured that out for me. You're going to get, it's not going to cost you $40,000. But you guys are going to change that this year, right?
We're working on it.
You're going to cut it down.
Yes. And there's the solar tax credit, SB 623. We're very hopeful that we'll be able to basically step it down over the next few years. It's obviously the House and the Senate are not in total agreement yet. Our conference committee will start next week sometime. But it will basically step it down to 30% in 2013, at least the numbers that we're working with right now, and then to 25% for 2014 and 15, down to 20% for 16 and 17, and then down to 15% in 2018. But the other thing to remember is that the federal tax credit expires in 2016, so that 30% is gone for residential. So, let me just.
But if the name of the game, Mike, is weaning ourselves from this oil-based energy, then we're taking away the credits, but we're making it easier for us to pay more, right? By this kind of payment plan.
Well, I mean, again, I think the fascinating thing about this idea is you're using private capital. This isn't ratepayer money. It's not taxpayer money. You're actually asking banks to invest in something, and then you're taking that, that money that's collected, your stream, and you're allowing it to be ultimately sustainable, right? Because you can keep, lending money out, getting it back paid out, and then lending it back out, and continuously doing this cycle. So the neat thing about this is that it's scalable, it's very low cost money. I mean, the interest rates on this are very low, and the idea is that we can keep doing it over time. And there really is never going to be the controversy that we see over the solar tax credit, where solar has almost been a victim of its success. As it's expanded, now all of a sudden it's starting to cost money, and people are looking at it and saying, well, we can't afford this anymore. I can make the argument why we can and why we should, but the nice thing about this concept here is it's not a taxpayer burden, it's not a ratepayer burden, and that's what's attractive to it.
And Dan, I want to touch, you mentioned something about paying more. This whole program is how do we get people to pay less on their utility bill? Ultimately, it's how do we allow customers to install something like solar power and actually reduce their overall bill, that they're going to now be getting electrons from the solar, electrons from the utility, and the whole bill will go down. So that savings really is savings that they can put into their children's college education, investments in their house. So it's really about how do we allow customers to pay less overall.
Because the utility is going to be buying the power from the homeowner, right?
Effectively, because these systems will still be connected to the grid, because we still need to emphasize a reliable, safe grid for everybody.
And to go along with what Traci is saying, just to give you another example from my district, run into a guy, talking story with him. He's paying $400 a month on his electric bill. 5 doors down, guy's got a full PV system, he's paying $18 a month. And this guy who's paying the $400, he doesn't have a clue about what's a tax credit? How can I do that? And so that's why this particular structure, setting up this program, is going to allow that guy and others to be able to get a system up on their roof, or whether it's solar water heater or any other energy efficiency kind of system, PV, whatever, and to be able to pay that on his electric bill. I mean,
the goal is to expand access.
Right.
I mean, right? That's the ultimate. Right. I mean, right now, sure, if you have a lot of money in the bank or a great credit score, it's not going to be really hard for you to figure out how to finance one of these projects. But there's flexibility that we're really allowing through the utility bill, and also it's a bill that customers get every month, and it's a bill they prioritize. So it actually is a really elegant solution that allows customers to see the savings accrue on the same bill where they're paying the cost of the project. And that's something that's really attractive in terms of customer acquisition and credit enhancement for a lending perspective.
Now, and something I was reading last night about this, it said the wonderful, you just used the word elegance, the simplicity of this system. Explain to me, as simply as you can, the simplicity of this system.
So you're the contractor,
right.
You come to my house, we identify some energy upgrades that we'd like to do. You tell me exactly how my bill is going to change once I've pursued this project, so I'll spend a certain amount less in energy every month, and I'm going to pay a certain amount to pay for the cost of that project. And full disclosure, I sign the contract. The next bill I get next month has a line item that says, upgrade financing charge. I pay my bill the same way I did last month. I mean, it's that simple. We would like the customer experience to be that easy.
And the simplicity, I think, is really important because it's simple on both ends. It's simple so that Senator Gabbard's constituent can figure it out simply and say, oh, what is this? Be able to figure out the installation. And when it comes on his bill, it's the same thing that he's been doing all these months, all these years, just paying the same bill, same envelope or same click of the button. And that's why we want to make this so simple for customers that they can all access this and we can increase affordability for everybody.
So maybe to make it a little bit more specific, that $400 bill potentially goes down to, say, $250 bill. So immediately that person's seeing $150 savings a month in their pocket. And
because they've got the panels.
They've got the panels. And what they're paying is essentially the financing charge that costs to install those panels. And so they're paying off the panels over time, and they're immediately seeing the electrical savings. So, a mandatory part of the program is your electric bill. Your bill has to go down. And so right off the bat, you're saving money, and you didn't really have to do any upfront. So it's sort of essentially a no-brainer.
And how long for a typical system? Now, your $40,000 one sounds a little high to me, but for a typical system, what would a person be paying?
And I guess we have to be clear. We have two different things going on right now. We have a legislative bill going through that sort of enables a program to be set up, and we have this regulatory process that's going to set up the details of the program.
The PUC.
The PUC. Right. And so the details of this program, we still have to work out. So, I can tell you exactly what I think it should be, but the reality is at the end of the day, probably it's going to be a period of time. Let's say, we're hoping next year the program would be ready to go, but some of the details still have to be fleshed out. When you're asking what the payback is, what the Public Utilities Commission has indicated is they want it to pay back in 12 years.
The Public Utilities Commission did have a study done, however, right? And what did the study conclude?
They clearly concluded that this program makes sense. It's a program we should proceed forward with, and they concluded that a lot of these installations can pay back, and you can actually have we call it a cash neutral or a bill neutral or a cash flow positive situation where you're actually getting money in your pocket. And so again, particularly in Hawaii where our electric rate, we pay 2 to 3 times more for electricity than the national average. In Hawaii, it plainly makes sense to do this program.
As the number of PV photovoltaic units go up, so do electricity costs for those who do not have photovoltaic. Traci, you still work for HECO, didn't you? Can we afford not to go with renewable energy? This person not to go with renewable energy. HECO is essentially charging those of us, I'm making a confession here, who do not have photovoltaic, pay more, right?
I have to agree with his statement. We can't afford not to invest in renewable energy as a state, whether it's these utility scale projects that you've probably seen that are helping us get to our 12% clean energy, whether it's the distributed generation like these solar systems that folks are installing on their homes or on their businesses. We have to invest in this if we're going to see a Hawaii that's sustainable not just for us, but for our children and our future children. And that's what this investment is really about.
If I could tackle that briefly, and California did a study exactly on this issue, and let me phrase the issue, I guess, briefly. The concern is as people install solar and get off the grid, that the remaining people on the grid have to pay more. And so in California, they studied this and they actually said, actually, it's not true. It's actually a slight benefit to the grid at large and everybody on, because these people, there's a lot of benefits. It makes the grid more stable. These people, when they're during the day, are actually providing power back onto the grid, which means less fuel has to be burned. And for HECO, their number one expense really is the fuel that they have to burn. So, you know, the PUC has started a study to analyze this Hawaii, to basically take the results or to look at how this applies in Hawaii. And I suspect every place that studied this, they basically said it breaks even or it's a slight benefit to the utility at large. So, I mean, I'd strongly respond or disagree that this actually is going to raise the cost for everybody else. And just to show you how silly that proposition can get, if that's true, then everybody should use as much electricity as possible, because that'll make the rates more affordable for everybody. And plainly, that doesn't quite make sense. All the concept of trying to do CFLs and reduce, that's just making the bill higher for everybody else. I mean, again, the proposition doesn't really quite work.
Robert Harris, somebody wants her after you. You testified in support of green infrastructure financing because it would help many Hawaii residents reduce their electric bill. Under net energy metering, photovoltaic is one of HECO's most expensive sources of electricity generation, with PV owners getting compensated the retail electricity rate for feeding their excess generated electricity back into the grid.
Yeah, so it's the same concept what we just talked about. For example, just as one metric, for every PV panel, you can roll back your electric meter, right? So if you're producing more power than you use, you can roll it back down to essentially zero. But then from then on out, that electricity is given to the utility for free. And looking at the utility in the whole, roughly 50% of the power produced by PV was given to the utility for free. And we can actually quantify how much power that was, and then quantify about how much fuel that was. So the estimates, that's about $50 million of fuel that the utility got for free and didn't have to pay anything for. That's just one measurement to show that the net metering program is not really a cost, but actually can also be a benefit. And again, studies in the mainland have looked at this, and looking at the costs and the benefits, have said that this is essentially a wash to the utility. It's not a cost overall.
What brought you out here, Jessica? Are you working for the state now? You giving them advice? They're picking your brain?
I'd love to stay for a while. I came out here really because in Environmental Defense Fund has spent a lot of time, and one of our priority initiatives is on-bill repayment. So we're working in California, in North Carolina, Texas, Ohio, on this program and trying to get this really gain traction in several different states. And we were put in touch with some of our colleagues here in Hawaii, and the PUC here was really enthusiastic about this. And with this decision on February 1st for on-bill financing, I think we just want to be here as a resource to help if we can, talk about some of our own experiences and the process that we're going through right now in California with the PUC, our legislative plans in other states, including California, and see how we can help work together.
Who's the furthest along with this?
California, I mean. Without
question.
Yeah, so the PUC in California, I mean, we're still going through and waiting for the final decision, hoping for implementation mid-year. For the on-bill repayment program as EDF's advocating for it, although there are on-bill programs throughout the country that vary in sort of how they work. So it's not really a new concept, it's just putting together this third-party capital and trying to increase the size of the pie. And that's what on-bill repayment really achieves. In theory, paying something back on your utility bill isn't new, right? I mean, many utilities offer your newspaper you can pay for on your utility bill. So it's actually sort of just putting together two things that exist in a new way.
But who's going to provide that third-party capital? I mean, where's that going to come from?
Well, hopefully.
Is there a lot of interest?
Yeah, we've engaged capital providers on the local, state, national level that are really interested in this program, and many capital providers are thinking about ways to invest in green projects, in ways that in clean energy, and this is a way they can actually see direct results and help property owners actually have clean energy, see bills go down, and it's really I mean, hopefully something that they can see as a new asset class.
Help me with the phrase capital provider. Is that somebody like Goldman Sachs, or is that a bank is a capital provider?
Yeah, exactly. It could be a bank,
an
a credit
investor?
union. I mean, we would like them to be qualified institutions rather than, you know, I divert my bank account. But hey, it could be crowdsourced funding one day for OnBill.
Oh, there's an idea.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
We can
let's
pay
try
for each
that.
other's systems.
That sounds like a good
But
idea.
you know, Dan, this is, as far as locally with the bill, that it's just received tremendous support from all across the board. I mean, you've got the utility on board, you've got labor on board, you've got the environmentalist on board. Everyone is on board in this. And my understanding, we would be the first in the nation to put into play this kind of program. And so the PUC is committed, and some of the details that Robert was discussing will be worked out. Actually, the working group, they have their first meeting tomorrow. Well, they'll start going through all the details on exactly how
Now, who's
this
the
thing will
working
work.
group? Is this the PU?
The PUC is set up. They've chosen various people from the industry, and yeah, and then also the authority that would be set up. They would be the ones that would make the decision once they get their executive director. Those kind of details, they would work out who would be the financing agency and who would actually run the day-to-day program. So those kinds of details would be forthcoming. But we're really excited about this.
Now let me get this clear. There are two bills going through that are of importance to you. Is that what you said?
Well, no, well, there's actually three for me.
Let's hear.
Okay, first this one. Top priority also is the
This is the on-bill repayment.
Yes.
That's going
Green
through.
infrastructure.
green infrastructure. Yeah. The second one is the tax credit, solar tax credit, setting those whatever the caps are going to be for utility scale as well as for residential. And the third, SB 19 has to do, we call it the renter's bill, because it would really open up, there's 194,000 rental units who do not have access to solar right now. And what this would do, we also call it the landlord exemption bill, because right now, let's say, for example, a shopping center wants to put up PV and then charge the tenants lower electricity rates. Well, right now they're considered a utility. So this bill would do is allow them to enter into an agreement with their tenants. Also, let's say a condo complex would be able to, the landlord would be able to enter into this agreement with his tenant, and then it would put into the rental agreement, you will pay, this will be your electric bill for however many years. And so those three pieces of legislation are very important in terms
Are they
of
all going to make
achieving
it?
Well, the House, April 9th is the big voting day, and I never like to say, you don't want to botchy this, Dan, but we're very hopeful.
Now, the renter's bill would solve your problem a bit. No.
Well, actually, so the green financing bill, or the OnBill, let's just to be clear too, one of the really attractive things about it is it actually unlocks it for the renter's market as well. Just imagine you're a renter and you want cheaper electric bills, but you're not going to pay for a solar system on somebody else's house. And if you're a landlord and you're not paying the electric bill, you're not going to pay for solar either because, hey, I don't pay the electric bill. So there's this, they call it split incentive. The neat thing about OnBill, what it potentially does is it allows a renter to go to landlord and say, hey, can I install this? You know, I don't have to pay anything up front, and landlord, you know, you don't have any cost to you, and basically it's making your property more valuable. And so it potentially unlocks the renter's market, which is roughly 40% of you know, people in Hawaii, you know, that homes in Hawaii have never been able to take advantage of this. And that's, again, one of the really exciting things about OnBill financing.
Since the utility company limits the number of homes in each area that can have solar, how will solar benefit the other folks in that district? Mike in Hilo wants to know.
I would say, you know, we've heard a lot of these stories, and, you know, if we focus on what this bill is doing, we're really looking at how do we remove barriers for everyone to, you know, install clean energy. This is the first barrier. How do we make it accessible and affordable? There's a lot of other barriers that we need to unlock. The next one is how do we unlock that barrier, of the technical barrier, and really figure out, not just for this program, but other renewables, intermittent power, firm power, so that we can achieve that clean energy goal that you talked about at the onset.
Tom in Hilo, these are two questions from people in Hilo, where it rains all the time. I don't know if you know Hilo. They don't have any sunshine over there. That may be why they're so cynical. Taking into account the tax credits and the sun power we have in Hawaii, it still takes, we're saying under this bill, 12 years is the optimum or what we're trying for. It still takes 10 to 12 years to recapture the cost of a photovoltaic system. Is that true?
I mean, it really depends, and I think that's a hard question to give you a specific answer, right? Because there's different costs of solar panels, and some people use more electricity or not, and some people live in Hilo where there may not be as much sun, and so you can't answer it specificity. But most of the times when these things, when we do leases and stuff, they actually prorate it over a 20-year period. But at the end of the day, really, I think what the average consumer cares about is how much money am I saving month to month, right? I don't care how long I pay it for, but am I immediately seeing savings? And how much is that? So to some extent, if we're able to reduce the electric bill from day one, that's a net win, right? And so that's sort of what we're striving for.
Sorry, and that's also dependent on what the interest rate is, right? And so what's really unique about what's happening in Hawaii is that there's this bill and there's also this process at the PUC. And when I said California is sort of the leader on an on-bill repayment, I didn't mean to neglect the fact that this is the first state to have these two in combination, this really unique low-cost financing that could be enabled through this legislation in concert with this on-bill repayment program. And having those together, having this low-cost capital source and creating this platform is a unique combination that can lower that payback period for people substantially, because we're not charging as high rates as we would have to otherwise.
What is HECO's incentive, Sean wants to know, to encourage all of us to move to solar? Isn't that a losing business model?
I think we all know that HECO has these lofty clean energy goals. They are actively and aggressively trying to get more clean energy on the grid. We have this statewide renewable portfolio standard, and HECO is a key player in that. So they are actively looking to get more solar, wind, whatever it may be, geothermal, biofuels. They are looking at all sources of renewable power to create this portfolio. No silver bullet. We really need to invest in all of those sources.
And what the viewer might be referring to also is actually there was a decoupling docket that decoupled the profits that the utility makes from how much energy we use. And that happened already, so that's why they have been stepping up to the plate in terms of getting involved. That's why they support this bill.
Juan from Wailuku wants to know, I tried installing solar panels, but MECO, that's Maui Electric, has so much demand in Wailuku, they are maxed out in my neighborhood. Can't wait until they open more supply. I guess that's not a question, that's a comment, isn't it? What is the possibility that the state of Hawaii could develop a solar manufacturing enterprise in Hawaii? Most are now made in China. Can we invest in enterprise locally? Yes. Some of the most nauseating people in the world nowadays are the people who put the photovoltaic in their house. And a lot of these people are people I hang around with. And they're always showing you their bill. How much did you pay? I paid $18. I paid $27. And I want to go, and I haven't put them on yet. I'm waiting until these guys explain this financial plan.
Don't forget those deadlines, 2016 on the federal.
Oh, you're right. Exactly. But the other thing they say is, make sure when you buy, they're always talking to each other. Well, are your panels Chinese made or are they American made? Do you hear this? Do you hear this one?
I think the key, though, is the folks who are saying, my bill was $18. And now it might make you feel nauseating, but when people get that bill, they feel like I'm in control. I'm empowered to be able to control my own expenses. And hey, by the way, I feel good because I went green.
It's as bad as people who have just run their first marathon. You've seen this.
They're on a high.
They're just awful. But could we build solar panels here? Are they hard to do?
It's probably a challenge for the same reason why we don't have a lot of industrial stuff going on in Hawaii. We're a relatively small market, we're remote, we don't have a lot of the natural supplies, so I don't want to be a downer on it. It's probably a difficult thing, but hopefully somebody's creative and clever and may think of a way to do it. But realistically, long term, if you were talking about job creation, if you think we have roughly 9,000 people now employed in the solar industry, and just 5 years ago, that number was probably in the hundreds, just to show you what type of exponential growth we've had, 26% of construction jobs. This is amazing good green jobs that we've all heard about is really happening underneath our noses, and that's become a really good stimulus on the economy. And the neat thing too is you have to imagine, these solar panels have lifespan somewhere in the 25-year range, and at some point they're going to have to be reinstalled. So we're kind of creating some sustainable jobs that are going to keep going and going and going, and hopefully, like as we started out, the $4 to $6 billion that we spent on oil will help stay in Hawaii. So there's a lot of economic benefits to the concept of getting more and more clean energy going in Hawaii.
What do you think is going to happen when and if these bills make it through? If everything happens the way you want it to, what's the first possible moment we can start this payment system?
Well, in terms of the PUC, from what I've heard, January 2nd of 2014 is when they're hoping to have this. The working group, they start their meeting tomorrow, and this is on the fast track.
So next session?
Possibly.
I mean, I think we're all hoping that this can get up and running as fast as possible. Like we talked about, there's some details that need to be worked out to make sure that this is the right program, it operates well, and we do see these consumer savings. But I think we all want to see ways that we can offer more tools to you and your neighbors and everyone else to say, how can I get control over my bill? How can I get more clean energy? So I think we're all really working towards how do we get a program up as fast as we can, and we'd love to see 2014.
You must have thought about this in your financing business, Jessica. What kind of a surge will this cause, or do you expect a surge as a result, or could this thing lay an egg, or be a Harris over here is like, oh, this will solve everything. But
I mean, I'd like to think from an environmental perspective we'll have a huge surge. I think it will take time to prove the concept, and I imagine there will be significant interest. And then over time, as we gather data and lenders get more comfortable thinking about a new loan for an energy upgrade, right? That's a new asset class. It's not a traditional mortgage. It's not an auto loan. It's a completely new kind of financing. And as we get more comfortable thinking about that as a secure, the utility bill as a secure form of repayment, I think you're going to see a ton of interest from the financial sector.
A new asset class. I love it.
Well, I mean, maybe to put it in this context, if you have two homes that are right next to each other, and one has the same price, it's very similar, and you're looking to buy one of these, and one has an electric bill of $1,000 a month, and one has an electric bill of $18 a month, from a financial perspective, mortgages, how we treat them, we won't treat them any differently, right? So the fact that one's considerably less expensive is not treated. So, it's not the best example, but we clearly have a market failure here in that from an investor perspective, we don't look at this as an good investment. And so what the state is doing at looking here is essentially accessing these utility bonds, rate reduction bonds, that utilities for decades have been able to access to get really, really cheap capital. So the utility's been able to get this cheap investment to be able to buy large power plants and different things. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make it available to you, the average customer. So you can get this cheap capital, low interest rate, and be able to essentially prove that this is something that is a good investment, is a secure investment. And as we start to do it and get it over time, our hope is to attract more and more private investment, because they'll look at this and say, gee, I can make money off this. It's secure. People pay their electric bills back because they don't want the power to be turned off. This is something that we hope over time we're going to create a whole new market for banks and credit unions and everything to invest in. And the neat thing, it's going to be a completely green bond. You can make money and also help the environment.
I think we want to see a surge. We really want to see, how can we prove this model out? The rest of the nation is watching. I mean, look, Jessica's here with us, and earlier, the other month we had Cisco DeVries, who's known as the father of PACE. So we have folks across the nation watching and wondering, what are we doing? They're really interested in seeing this as a model. We want to see this surge and see how can this program evolve and attract more capital, finance other technologies, and really see how do we use this as a tool to help us achieve that 70% clean energy goal. We have a long way to go. That's a lot of investment we still need to make. So we want to see how can we use these innovations and really help to invest in all of this infrastructure.
Well, one thing we haven't mentioned, Dan, is that the whole commercial aspect. Let's say there's a hotel in Waikiki that wants to upgrade their air conditioning system, right? Mm-hmm. They would be able to tap into this. My understanding is that they would be able to tap into this energy efficiency and save tremendous amounts. What I've heard, the numbers in terms of it's like 2 to 3% is what the numbers that I've heard in terms of interest. So how can you pass up something like this?
I think this week, Tuesday afternoon, I spent time at an organization, quite a lot of time at an organization that deals largely with affordable housing and senior needs and so forth. And talking about, in last week we were talking about poverty bills here and trying to help the large number of people who are taxed. And it just seems to me that there's an awful lot of people who are not going to benefit this no matter what kind of payment plan you want, and you come up with. And we extend it. I don't know. I've gotten so cynical. It's really sad. The panel is only talking about solar energy. What other types of renewable energy would be eligible for this program? Is there any?
I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think that's what we're looking at through this working group process to make sure that you know, we can allow financing of the technologies that are available that can save consumers money. You know, initially I think we look at solar hot water, solar PV, because there is a market and there is a market failure right now. You know, there's very successful companies. We're seeing solar on a lot of roofs. You talked at the beginning of, we see solar in certain communities, but maybe not others. So there is a market failure, right? It's working over here, but what about everybody else?
Right.
And so we say, you know, we want to say, how can we use this kind of low interest money to kind of help, you know, spread the benefits? And so that's kind of initially what we're looking at. But, you know, as things evolved, as technologies evolved, as, you know, the holy grail would be how can we get, you know, big energy efficiency and put all of this together?
So for example, your air conditioner breaks if you are one of the newer homes that has air conditioning and you want to install a new air conditioner. You know, can we at that time incentivize you to buy the more energy efficient air conditioner, allow you to finance it, so your electric bill automatically goes down. Some contractor got to sell you a slightly more expensive air conditioner, so they're happy. You're happy because your electric bill is lower than what you're paying the month before. And generally as a state, we're happier because we're now using less oil or less fuel or whatever it is to power your home. And so energy efficiency clearly is one of the goals from this.
And Dan, to address what you had mentioned about the meetings that you've been going to, dealing with the homeless, et cetera, one of the things that I've been talking about at many, many different events and functions, and that is the need to get the word out to people. The public outreach is so important here. So, you know, for example, there's over 700 churches here, and I've become a bit of an energy evangelist myself, because here you have a captive audience, and they should be preaching from the pulpit about being good caretakers, and here's ways that you can help preserve our planet and plus save money on your monthly electric bill. So, I mean, the whole outreach, I mean, Jade Moon is doing some stuff on, and she does it for HECO, the
just
TV
the way you
commercials.
were doing that, I was about to go, hallelujah, brother, hallelujah.
But we need to do more. There needs to be more outreach just so people can understand this is available and this is going to help you.
Sure.
Yeah.
I purchased photovoltaic from a local company, and I got a loan from a local bank with deferred 2-year payment plan. Combination of bank loan and electric bill is lower than the old bill. Is the panel aware that this is available now in Hawaii? Can anybody, is that common?
That's quite true, and we don't want to in any way stop that kind of thing happening, but it clearly doesn't work for everyone. So for instance, renters aren't going to qualify for that. My example, you know, my wife and I just recently purchased a home, so we have a mortgage, and we've mortgaged all the way up, and I can access some line of credit, but you know, I want to save that in case there's some catastrophe. So the neat thing about this concept that we're talking about here is it's on my electric bill. It's almost like my electric meter went out and got a loan, and it doesn't apply to me. So I still get my line of credit, and if I ever move, it stays with home, and I get to move along with my personal line of credit. So there's, you know, in a lot of ways, we don't want to compete with the existing market. We don't want to create something new, but we also want to provide a new tool to a wider class of people that currently can't access it.
Potentially that same bank that lent money for the homeowner to do the panels would be able to offer a lower cost loan if the customer repaid it on their bill. So we're actually just trying to utilize this repayment mechanism of the bill to make that product more affordable, in no way trying to compete with anything, you know, with the existing markets, trying to make those products more affordable for customers.
I was going to say, you know, what's also elegant about this is to say if we can use some of this low interest money to prove this out, we want to attract more of this private capital and show them, hey, this repayment mechanism, it works. and have private banks come in and say, okay, I can lower my lending threshold and basically expand my market. And you know what, that's success. If we can show the private banks to do this, open up their program even more.
How much per month should I expect to pay for the average 3-bedroom house for photovoltaic? It will save me cost on electric, but I first have to pay for the PV, so what does it break down to? Please give me a realistic idea. Glenn wants to know.
So again,
you can't do it.
Well, I mean, we can do some hypotheticals, right? So if the electric bill, say, on average is about $200 a month, to qualify for this, they would have to get, I mean, for the program to work and the way the program's set up, that electric bill has to go down, and they don't have any upfront costs. So their electric bill goes down from $200 to something lower. Now, you're going to ask, what is something lower? Well, it's a hard answer because it really depends where they are, et cetera. Right. Also, it depends on their behavior. I mean, if you're leaving the refrigerator open all the time, well, you know, it's going to be a tougher thing to address.
No, but I go to it a lot. You know, something like that.
I didn't mean to say anything.
No comment on your behavior.
What can I say? If purchasing solar system and if I purchasing a solar system and lose my job and can't make payments, could I lose my home? Is my home held as collateral? David on the Big Island wants to know.
No, this is not a lien on your property. This program is structured as a tariff on your utility meter. So if this unfortunate situation happened to occur, there would be no lien on their property, and that's a really important part of our program and why we think that it will work for renters who don't have equity in their properties but would still be able to access on-bill repayment.
Charlie Moili lives in a condo where it is not possible to install solar. Will he be paying for expensive electricity forever? That's the thing you brought up before. Probably.
Well, I think that's the neat thing about technology, right? Is, you know, I can't say exactly where it's going, but, you know, hopefully one day we will see, you know, solar panels for the railings of your condos, or we will see kind of different technologies come out, like I mentioned earlier. As it evolves, we want to find ways to be able to finance it like this.
Tracy, this comes from a fellow who identifies himself as a Dartmouth guy from Kona. So I'll ask the two of you about this. Certainly, we couldn't answer. How can we become? Think Ivy. How can we become oil independent when the airlines import jet fuel? We have a problem there. Is that part of your sermon too? About we're constantly getting on airplanes. Think about what do you think about that
all the time?
Do you?
Yeah, and it's actually it's something that really is troubling to me. And so a lot of the airlines are working hard on trying to integrate biofuels into their fuel mix, and I really think that is the next sort of transportation, aside from the built environment, which in the U.S. is 40% of emissions are a result of the built environment. The transportation is another huge nut to crack, and I mean, they have a great point, and I think we're making progress there.
A couple of questions about this. What are the solar panels are warranted for 5 years. That's how long it takes to pay for it in HECO bill savings. Then the technology breaks down. It must be replaced. The solar company makes the money and just takes the place of HECO as the moneymaker. The consumer makes little or nothing. It saves nothing by switching to solar from fossil fuels. This Peter on the North Shore. Anybody want to respond to Peter on the North Shore?
I think that's part of our program design, is making sure these are quality installations. These are, quality installers, to make sure that our consumers are getting that upfront savings and that they are protected so that they will see their bills be lower and continue like that. So that is part of this process, to make sure that these are going to be quality installations.
These are the same kind of questions you get when you buy a hybrid car, or I guess not with a electric vehicle, but how long is the battery going to last? And you're making a bad investment here if you buy a hybrid car, right? No bad investment.
Well, I don't know about hybrid. Mine's a 100% Nissan Leaf electric. I've had it for 2 years.
Excuse me if I turn my back.
I'm saving $250 a month in gas. And had it for 2 years, 28,000 miles.
And all of you arrived in electric vehicles.
You mentioned the
right?
You mentioned the cult of PV. There's also a cult of electric vehicle owners. You get it either way.
But the answer, at least what we're told, is that after 5 years, the battery is down to about 80%. At least that's what I was told. But we haven't had any problems at all.
Well, what are the average credits for an average system, and are these credits refundable or non-refundable? Dan and Eva wants to know. So with 70%, right?
So currently, our tax credit system is not entirely simple. It's 35% or $5,000 per system, whichever is lesser. And it's created a lot of confusion because there's what is a system, and there's been disputes about this.
And
so,
the governor has a point of view on this, doesn't he?
Yes, and we have an opposite point of view, and we're now in litigation over what this is. But in the meantime, what the legislature is trying to do under the leadership of Senator Gabbard here and Representative Chris Lee is trying to move to something that's a little bit simpler and easier, and they're actually following the federal system. And they're looking at just basically doing a flat credit, just easy to apply, and it will be refundable. So again, the model that's currently being discussed would be 30% this year and going down to 25% the next 2 years, and so on and so on. And the idea is PV panels have dropped in price, and we hope they're going to continue to drop in price. So perhaps our incentives can be dropped a little bit as well. The tax credits were intended to get the solar industry going and moving. It's clearly starting to get to the point where you can say it's a healthy, vibrant industry, and perhaps some of the support can be done a little bit, and that's the conversation we're trying to have.
Seems to me that every guy on every other corner is putting up solar, I mean, they're photovoltaic contractors of some type or another. Instead of going small to the individual financing or tax credits, why not go big? Why not build a large OTEC plant? It will benefit everyone. It is expensive, but we taxed everyone 0.5% for rail. Oh, there goes another rail question. Any thought about that?
Ocean thermal energy conversion, OTEC, got a 1 megawatt pilot going on the Big Island at Nelha in Kona. And I was there for the groundbreaking last year, maybe it was the year before, and there were people from all over the world who are keeping their eye on that particular project. Of course, 1 megawatt isn't that big a deal, but if that is successful, then they're already looking at the numbers to commercialize, to go much higher to 100 megawatts. So it's another one that's on the table. As I said at the very beginning, everything is on the table here in order to reach our goals of clean energy.
And I think that's a good point, is that I think we're going to need all of the above to really achieve the type of goals we want to achieve. So for the person who lives in a condominium, for example, who doesn't have the ability to install solar, well, we want to have more centralized, we call them renewable energy sources, hopefully providing cheaper, less expensive power, in complement with the modern trend for a grid, a smart grid, is to have lots of different power sources providing power, not one monolithic power source, but to spread it out and make it diverse. And that's sort of where we need to be headed.
Dennis in Honolulu wants to know, the panel is made up of cheerleaders. What about providing the whole picture? How much renewable energy is used for electrical generation? Renewables are not reliable sources of power. This is Dennis in Honolulu. Anybody want to respond to that?
Well, I think the senator at the very beginning talked about we have 12% clean energy generation. In terms of being reliable or non-reliable, we have intermittent power, say, solar and wind. When the sun is shining, we get solar power. At nighttime, we don't. You have firm renewable energy, things like geothermal and biomass. And I think, I don't mean to sound like the cheerleader, but we need all of it. We need the portfolio of it. And yes, alongside of that, we're going to need to invest in, this smart grid concept. How do we continue to evolve, the actual transmission and distribution of this intermittent power, of the firm power, of all of the power that we have to serve Hawaii.
And Dan, you mentioned at the very beginning about game changers. I firmly believe that geothermal will be the game changer in our state.
But you know as well as I do that, we hear it all the time here. If there are people who are for geothermal, then there are people, we had a new senator in your body from the Big Island, very, very hesitant about it. You go to wind, geez, look at the controversy we have. We're talking about solar all the time. The conversation's about solar. Why? Because that's the only one that there seem to be enough people around who've got enough money to invest in it. And there's not somebody causing trouble and saying, no.
But it's also
this is besmirching the environment, one of these environmental groups, I'm sorry.
But it's also something you can put on your roof, right? It's real estate that's already there. We're not covering up a new sort of park in the town where it's something that is on your house and it exists. And there's something that's really unique about that versus and not relying on the solar farm 100 miles away, right? There's a big difference between putting something on your roof and in wind and geothermal. Those are, I mean, I hope that we can get to the point where those are distributed energy resources and that are viable. But right now, solar is the one that's working.
I'd love to put a wind turbine on my house. I think it'd be great.
It'll be a unique house in the neighborhood, Traci, I'm sure. Will this further marginalize those with poor credit who do not qualify for standard financing and leave poor folks holding the infrastructure tab?
That's exactly the opposite of the objective here. We're trying to expand access. So, for those who wouldn't necessarily qualify for the loan that this gentleman got for his solar panels, that we'd actually be able to say, well, let's go a little bit deeper in the credit spectrum and lend to those who wouldn't qualify before because we feel like we're pretty secure that they're going to pay us back on the utility bill. So it's really what we're trying to avoid.
Mike in Honolulu asked a question. That is, what happens to a solar system at the end of its 20-year life? Is there a plan for disposal? I mean, do they wear out in 20 years? I don't.
So actually, I mean, that's the average useful life, but some of them now are coming with much longer warranties. You're getting 30, 35-year warranties. In general, the panels are made of silicon. And I mean, again, it's stuff that is, generally speaking, I have to say I'm not a complete expert on this, but this isn't, it's generally speaking, recyclable. It's useful stuff that can be reused. So again, in the broad context of it, if you're comparing this to the cost of, for instance, burning oil or coal and what that does to the environment and the millions of pounds of carbon dioxide and emissions and everything, in some ways, solar typically is viewed as the greenest electrical source you can find.
Well, I told somebody coming in here this could be a long night because it's going to be technical, and it's over already. And you guys have been terrific, and I've learned a lot, and I think anybody who's watching has too. Thanks very much for coming. Thank you for coming. Don't use up too much diesel fuel going home. Join us next week for one of the controversial issues confronting state lawmakers this year. Hawaii is one of only 18 states to legalize the use of marijuana for medicinal purposes. During this legislative session, civil liberties advocates and drug policy analysts tried to take it a step further by lobbying for pot's decriminalization. We'll debate the ongoing pros and cons of easing the penalties on growing and using marijuana. That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. Hui hou.